Just Not Be You, Debunking the Myths of Addiction. Why, for that matter, would anyone indulge, if that is the right word, in such self destructive behavior? If the success of a doctor is measured by how long his patients live, I would often say then I am a failure because many of my patients die young. They died from complications of HIV or from hepatitis C or infections of their heart valves, brains, spines, bloodstreams. They fell victim to suicide, overdose, or violence, or to vehicles that struck them while they stumbled in a drugged out haze onto busy streets. Unlike high bottom addicts like us, Bruce, many rehabilitated now and back on the job, my patients had lost everything: their health, look, teeth, their families, work, homes. Some had squandered lives of middle class comfort, and a handful had gone, surprisingly, from riches to rags. All along, they knew full well they were facing the ultimate forfeit, their lives, and still having struck bottoms lower than most of us could conceive of, they persisted in their habits, as I depicted in my 2009 book on addiction in the realm of hungry ghosts. Prevailing views about addiction have progressed somehow, in the somewhat in the past decade, in the direction of more compassionate science and sense. For all that, deceptive and dangerous myths about addiction's provenance and its very nature still reign in many circles, from medical treatment to criminal justice and policy. Even the well meaning world of rehabilitation and recovery has its blind spots. Given the evident shortcomings and even ruinous harm wrought by our standard approaches, many voices are finally calling for a fresh view. Recent studies have shown that repeated drug use leads to long lasting changes in the brain that undermine voluntary control. Translation: when it comes to addiction, free will is in many ways a neurobiological non sequitur. In fact, I would take it much further. Most addicted people had little choice even before their habits took hold. Their brains arrived on the scene already impaired by life experiences, especially susceptible to the effects of their drug of choice. Substances of dependence do over time change the brain, so that essential functions such as impulse regulation, which would aid someone in resisting addiction's pull, become significantly compromised, even as the circuits of reward and motivation become trained on the desired drugs. In this sense, the brain does become an impaired organ with diminished capacity to make rational choices, obsessively intent instead of satisfying the addictive drives. Viewing addiction as a dynamic process to be engaged with, rather than a demonic force to be feared or battled, can ultimately expand the possibilities for healing. For a more grounded take on addiction, we need to consider not just people's genes or brain circuitry, but also their real encounters with their world. We need to look closely at people's lives experiences. Addictions of any kind are not abnormal ailments, willfully self inflicted maladies, brain disorders, or genetic short straws. Properly understood, they are not even that puzzling. As with other ostensibly mysterious conditions named in this book, they are rooted in coping mechanisms. To be sure, they may take on some features of disease, a dysfunctional organ, tissue damage, particularly, with extensive drug use, physical symptoms, impairment of certain drug circuits, cycles of remission and relapse, even death. But to call them diseases is to miss both the point and the opportunity to deal with them intelligently. Addictions represent in their onset the defenses of an organism against suffering it does not know how to endure. In other words, we are looking at a natural response to unnatural circumstances, an attempt to soothe the pain of injuries incurred in childhood and stresses sustained in adulthood. Just as I have never met anyone who chose to become addicted, neither have I met anyone whose addictions did not, at their onset at least, provide some essential human need. The rock guitarist and reality TV star Dave Navarro told me that he found his addictions a kind of love and acceptance, another running theme among users. His fellow podcaster and author, the British comedian Russell Brand, also spoke of love. The first time I took heroin, it felt so sacred and spiritual and warm and maternal, he said. I felt like I was held. I felt like nothing mattered and I felt safe. His use of the word maternal is more than metaphorical. It speaks directly to the biology of opiate addiction.